Hello, guys. Welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm very glad that you've joined me today. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to this channel because on a regular basis, I post updates in relation to monitoring and evaluation. So, maybe let me start by saying I haven't been posting for the past 2 weeks. I hope you understand. I was quite busy. It's quite a busy period because of the coaching program people are enrolling, and it does present a bit of some workload. But also, I just want to tell you that do you remember last year I actually talked about the Sustainable Development Report by the United Nations? Remember, there are these sustainable development goals which are being spearheaded by the United Nations. Okay, we talked about that report. I've been searching all over the internet for the latest report, and what is in front of you is the latest 2021 report. But I have to tell you that I'm seeing this actually as I am explaining this. What you're seeing here is what you get. I haven't really read through this report, but I want us to go through it together. It's a lengthy report, but I'm not going to look at everything. I just want us to get a bit of a feel. Okay, and I want to show you how I peruse through these lengthy reports. Okay, so I think let's get started with it. If you have any questions, please write to me, Skype me, do whatever you want. But let's get down to business. Okay, so to start with, this is actually a report by Cambridge. Okay, Cambridge is a university in UK. I'm pretty sure you know Cambridge. If you don't know Cambridge, it's a university in the UK, and it's one of the biggest universities around the world. So when they do some research, they mean business. So now I don't know why it's Cambridge this time, because I should have seen something done by the United Nations themselves. But apparently, this year it looks like Cambridge is spearheading this, and this is what these are the partners which are here. You've got the Cambridge University Press and these other guys. Okay, so now let's go straight to, because like I said, I haven't really read through this, but I thought we could surprise ourselves together just to get a bit of a feel of what is actually in it. I'll leave the link in the description so that you can actually download this report yourself and read it, and perhaps we can discuss about it, you and I. Of course, I have a lot of people writing to me, but I have to tell you that I can't respond to all emails, but at least having part of the share in the discussion, it does contribute a lot. Okay, so let's go to acknowledgements. It says this report was coordinated by Julian Lafortune, actually, and Christian Crow under the overall supervision of Jeffrey D. Search. Lead writers are Jeffrey D. and all those other guys. The statistical work was led by the list other guys. Okay. So the views expressed in this report do not reflect the views of any organizations, agencies, or programs of the United Nations. The report combines data and analyses produced by international organizations, civil society, and research centers. We thank all of these organizations for their contribution and collaboration in producing the report, including during the annual public consultation that took place in March and April 2021. Okay, we all thank the experts, government officials for responding to the 2021 survey on national implementation and coordination mechanisms for the SDGs. Okay, so apparently, now I'm getting it. You have a team of experts collecting data from different stakeholders, organizations, government agencies, even the governments themselves, so that they can be able to track how we are performing in terms of the achievement of the SDGs. Okay, I think that's basically what I've gotten. Okay, so now just to get a feel, usually the executive in any report, the executive summary gives you a summary of how, just gives you a brief overview of how things are on the ground. Okay. And in this executive summary, they talk about the COVID-19 pandemic as being a setback to the sustainable development everywhere. And then they talk about the low income countries in the executive summary. The SDG and the six SDG transformations can inform sustainable, okay, this and that. Global challenges including pandemics. Rich countries generate negative international spillovers, okay. All right, so essentially, I think for today's discussion, let's just focus on the executive summary, okay. So now I hope you can use the timestamps, and I'll try to develop some timestamps so that you can navigate your way through this video. But essentially, the question I have is, are we winning in achieving the sustainable development goals? Okay, so let me just increase the size so that we all read this together. So they are saying that the COVID-19 pandemic is a setback for sustainable development everywhere. And that one, I think we don't need to even discuss any further, because it's quite apparent that it has created a lot of problems. But in the eyes of these experts, they're saying for the first time since adoption of SDG in 2015, the global average index score for 2020 has decreased from the previous year. It declined driven to a large extent by increased poverty rates and unemployment following the outbreak of the pandemic. The pandemic has impacted all three dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, and environmental. The highest priority of every government must remain the suppression of the pandemic through non-pharmaceutical interventions and global access to vaccines. Okay, so in summary, what is this really telling us? Essentially, I don't know what this SDG index score is, guys, but whatever index it is, it basically gives you those indications of whether we are winning the war or we are losing. So as you can see, from 2015 up to 2019, there was, so I'm assuming that this SDG score, as it gets higher, it means we are winning. But looking at what we are seeing here, there's a sharp decline. And essentially that means because of the COVID-19, we have not seen any improvement. It's like we are declining in what we thought we could achieve at the end of the day. So I guess I don't need to explain this, because with the COVID-19, there's been a lot of unemployment. Of course, the vaccine has come into the picture, but still, we actually as a world had to fast track the vaccine. And right now, as we are speaking, some people who got vaccinated are still getting reinfected. So it's not 100% affair, bulletproof affair, for lack of a better term, but I'm sure everyone is trying their best, especially the scientists. So all they are saying is that really the overall index score has declined, which is not surprising. Okay, so they talk about the low income development countries lack the physical space to finance emergency response and investment led recovery plans. Very true. I don't even need to read all of this. The low income developing countries don't even have the money for something as big as this. And that is why you find that the rich nations will go back to the vaccine. The rich nations are actually now donating some of the COVID vaccines that they have to the poorer nations. And this is very expensive, money that should have been used to develop these low income countries, money that should have been used to accelerate economic growth has been hampered because now they have to shift funds to, you know, fight this pandemic. I mean, you can see it for yourself, probably in your own countries. The health system is being constrained, and health workers are really in trouble, including just normal civilians. Okay, so this one is so how does this affect the SDGs? I mean, with a shift in the income to fight this war, this global pandemic, really development is hampered, and now you see unemployment. It all gets back to the same thing. Okay, the SDGs and the six SDG transformations can inform a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient recovery from COVID-19. Okay, let's see what they're saying. While the pandemic is a setback for sustainable development, the SDGs, along with the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Climate Agreement, provide the right compass for building forward better. Before the pandemic hit, significant progress had been achieved on the SDGs in many regions and on many goals, especially in East and South Asia. Okay. I don't know about, of course, they're using their findings, but according to the report I read last year, it pretty much looked to me that we were not really winning. But anyway, these are the experts. They've told us that we had made significant progress. So now what are they saying? At the national level, Bangladesh, Cote d'Ivoire, Afghanistan have improved most on the SDG index since 2015. COVID-19 should not lead to a prolonged reversal in SDG progress. International commitments, for instance, towards climate neutrality must be rapidly accompanied by transformative action and investments. Large fiscal packages of major economies present an opportunity to foster a green, digital, and inclusive recovery. Okay, excellent. Yeah. So I really agree with this because and it well agrees with just the basic principles of economics. You know, there are all these economic cycles that the world goes through. You have periods when the world economy is succeeding, and you have periods when the world economy is getting down, such as the one we are in. So essentially, what they are saying is that soon we are going to get back on track. The economy will get back on track. And during that time, that is the time when now we can foster and improve our way of life. And that can only happen when we get past this bad cycle of poor economic performance, especially due to this COVID-19 pandemic. However, this issue of digital, let me talk about it. And I really want you guys to write to me in case you have anything else to say on this issue. The If it's anything that the COVID-19 has taught us, is that we can actually take full advantage of the digital realm. Before the COVID, we used to invest a lot of our time um, meeting physically, especially when we go to conferences. But now, today, we are using technology. We are using things like Zoom, Skype, in order to have a meeting. Now, what this means for the future is a bit unclear, but it could mean that there may be cheaper and efficient ways to get the job done. And with the learning that has been done in this difficult time, it might be used as lessons learned in furthering the way we do our daily business with each other. We probably won't need to travel extensively to different countries just to have a meeting because we have Zoom, we have Skype. But what this means, we don't know. Does it mean that businesses may lose income because more and more people are going digital. Of course, there's people who are running Zoom and Skype will definitely have definitely be the happier guys. But what about those people who need to rent out their conference facilities and things like that? So I guess it's just we just have to wait and see how this unfolds. Okay, so let's go to the next. I like to look at these things as also lessons learned because the way they are writing them, they come out like they could be lessons we could be, thinking about right now. Okay, so global challenges including pandemics, but also climate change and biodiversity crisis require a strong multilateral system. Damages to ecosystems and nature may lead to the emergence of the zoonotic disease and pathogens, possibly with a much higher case fatality rate next time. Climate change has already led to a sharp rise in natural disasters, including droughts, typhoons, the impact of rising sea levels, and heat waves. The digital revolution has moved many supply chains online but also increased the risk of widespread cyber attacks. No country can single-handedly prevent, respond, and recover from these global shocks. Now more than ever, the multilateral system must be supported to work effectively. Strengthening preparedness, coordinated response, and resilience to critical risks are key to supporting the decade of action for the SDGs. I really like the way they've written this. This is superbly written. I think they've hit the nail. You know, I always ask myself, why did the COVID-19 break out in the first place? And, as I was sitting, it it clicked in my mind that it probably was because we didn't really manage our risk effectively. We didn't really, what is the best way to say this? Risk management was not really, it was good, but I feel that we should have done better. Because the thing is that when they talk of all these climate change things, when they talk of cyber attacks, when they talk of uh, I'm sure you see what's what's on in the narrative. It's simply telling us that this multilateral system is actually a, a risk mitigation measure which everybody globally needs to adopt. Okay, and I remember I did another video some months ago, actually last year. I talked about the need to have a very airtight monitoring and evaluation system that critically analyzes these potential attacks that we can have. So it's really up to us to. So now, what do they mean when they say multilateral system? Before I go to that point, I wanted to talk about. I'm thinking that they are simply saying that in as much as we are trying to mitigate climate change, it shouldn't be our only response, but we should be doing different approaches simultaneously in order to prevent the possibility of having something catastrophic that we are experiencing today. So I think this really is a good way of summing it up. We need some airtight risk mitigation strategy that protects us from these kind of calamities that we are experiencing today. It says rich countries generate negative international spillovers that undermine other countries' ability to achieve the SDGs. This year's SDG index is topped by three Nordic countries, Finland, Sweden, and Denmark. Yet even these countries face major challenges in achieving several SDGs. The 2021 International Spillover Index included in this report underlines low-rich countries can generate negative socio-economic and environmental spillovers, including through unsustainable trade and supply chains. Tax havens and profit shifting in many rich countries undermine other countries' ability to mobilize needed financial resources to achieve the SDGs. Various types of global tax reforms could significantly increase government revenue in developing countries. Okay, so essentially what they are saying here, I may not understand everything, especially with these spillovers they're talking about, but I do have an idea of what they are saying. The thing is that we live in a global village, okay? So whatever decisions that, for instance, the USA makes, it can have a negative impact in some way to the low developing countries. I'll give you a practical example of this. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit some of these great nations, it came all of a sudden. They had to shift most of their money in order to fight this disease. So, meaning they had to pump in money for their already constrained health systems. Even for the nations that had strong health systems, they had to pump in money. Now, if you look at that scenario, that budget which they were using, part of it, I'm just thinking, could have been donor aided money they should have distributed to the other countries, the poor countries they are supporting. And what is the impact to those poor countries? It probably meant that some countries or some organizations in operating in these poor countries may have not gotten their funds at all, or may have not gotten them on time, because already these nations, these great nations, so that was kind of like a spillover. That's the simplest example I can give, but I'm pretty sure they're talking about something also similar but a bit off key from what I'm talking about. But all it's saying is that we are a global village and everybody gets affected one way or another. Okay, so let's see, there are two more. Like I told you, I didn't read this, so we are reading this for the first time together. The pandemic has underlined the need to accelerate progress towards universal health coverage and universal access to key infrastructure, especially digital infrastructure. The COVID-19 crisis. Okay, so do you get the feeling that these guys, the writers of this SDG report, are just talking about the COVID-19? I'm sorry to say this, but yes, the COVID-19 has actually negatively impacted everything that we do, but it's not really reporting on the SDGs from what I'm seeing. Okay, and I think so far in the executive summary, maybe we're going to see something here, but I would have wanted to see more on, because in the sustainable development goals we have different themes. Maybe they should have given us a summary of each of those themes, but maybe it's in the report. So let's just go and read what this other sub theme says, this subheading. The crisis has made it very clear that countries equipped with effective social protection systems and universal health coverage are best equipped to respond to such crises. This is also less costly, and it is precisely for this reason that the SDG call for countries to strengthen their social safety nets and move towards universal health coverage for key medical services. Digital technologies have played a critical role in sustaining social services, payments, schooling, and healthcare. The importance of digital applications underscores the vital importance of universal access to broadband services as key to social inclusion. Okay, all right. So I think it just comes down to something that I talked about, I think even last year. This much I know about, I'm sure many people know about this, that there is need for a good infrastructure. But the problem with having a good infrastructure is that some nations can't afford it. So the issue is the resources. How do they get the required resources to have this infrastructure, this ideal infrastructure? They need support. So I think this is key in order to sustain the public health system. Data gaps and time lags in official statistics highlight the need for further investment in statistical capacity and new approaches to monitor countries' commitments and progress on key SDG transformation. Okay, robust and timely data are needed to monitor SDG progress. Okay, so maybe this explains why most of their executive summary doesn't even talk about the SDG thematic areas. Maybe this is the problem. Maybe they were finding challenges actually finding uh, data, consistent data. So, what could be the problem? I can think of it, I could think of the problem as being, the challenge is that you can't have one heart fits all. So, in the whole world that we're living in, most of these nations have statistical agencies. I'm sure of it. But the problem is that these statistical agencies are not at the same level. They have different challenges that they are facing. They probably Some nations take it more seriously than others. Others have gone fully digital. Others are still, trying to mainstream these things. It becomes a challenge. So I think that's where the problem is where you have all these different stages, these different levels of a statistical capacity, as they say. I don't know the solution to this. I really don't. But I would want to think that since the United Nations is the one spearheading this global program, they should have deliberate interventions in each of these countries to have these statistics coming in. All right. Because you can't, if you are going to say no, these nations should give this data voluntarily, it's not going to work, trust me. So there has to be a deliberate move from these United Nations country offices to get this data. And how they get it, I don't know, but they just have to get it, because if there are all these data gaps, then the conclusions that we'll be making may not be substantiated. So we really need to work on this if we're going to get anywhere. Okay, so what is my view about this report so far? It's I think I need to do some more reading, but I'm thinking that what I wanted to see was in their executive summary they should have been able to highlight each of the SDGs, the progression of each of the SDGs. But it looks like it may come in the report, maybe. I'm not sure, but I'm seeing something here. There are tables. But I think the executive summary should give you an overview of what the content of the report is. So I think what I'll do, guys, I'll give me some time to read this report, and please write to me in case of any questions and the contributions that you have. I'll leave the link to this report in the description. Okay. So as for now, I want to call it a day. I hope all of you enjoyed this presentation. Please take full advantage of the timestamps. I've been your host, Coach Alexander, and see you on the other side. Bye.